Hello there, Ramblers, and welcome back to Reese Rambles, my weekly podcast all about the latest comings and goings, movings and shakings, and indeed all the rest of it in the worlds of vintage and retro computing, gaming and technology. Hope you're doing well out there, and welcome to the weekend, and indeed welcome to Ramble number 123. I know we don't usually announce what number Ramble we're on, and it's not something I'm going to start doing in future episodes, but number 123, that's quite a pleasing number, isn't it? I know when I just created the folder to start dumping these files and things in, that it's quite nice to type, if nothing else. Anyway, speaking of vintage and retro computing, gaming and technology news, however you choose to define that, there has been quite a big breaking story in the last few minutes, which has been posted to my Discord server by Suze. So thank you ever so much for sharing this, because I'm not on Facebook. I know I have a page on there, but I use a false kind of empty account to post stuff to there, post videos and stuff to there. I'm not an active Facebook user. It has been a wonderful thing, I will say, over the past kind of 6 years since I deleted my personal account. But that's not what we're here to talk about today. We are here to talk about Commodore, and indeed the YouTuber Perifractic, aka Christian Simpson. I talked about this a couple of weeks ago, and how he had launched this campaign to acquire the Commodore brand, and how they had started selling some C64 Ultimates, so the Ultimate Commodore 64, using modern parts, FPGA, a modern keyboard, and all of that stuff. And they were taking pre-orders for those, and they were going to use part of the money from those pre-orders to actually finance the acquisition of the Commodore brand, which is all quite exciting. And today, apparently, ahead of schedule, that has finally happened. So, firstly, congratulations, I think, are due to Peri, of course, with his YouTube channel, Retro Recipes. He's been doing it for years and years now. One of the channels that kind of inspired me to start myself. I've seen quite a lot of chatter about this, about him and about his channel. Of course, over the past few weeks, the spotlight has very much been on him, but we're going to keep this positive because, hey, it's a fresh start for a much-loved brand, and I'm actually quite interested to see and quite excited to see what he's going to do with it. So the post over on Facebook, as shared by Suze over on Discord, it's from the Commodore International Corporation official Facebook page, and it reads, "We did it! Commodore is home. This week, ahead of schedule, we made the final payment, locking in the deal thanks to you, and CEO Perifractic signed the final contracts in the Netherlands, officially acquiring all 47 original Commodore trademarks." Now, as mentioned, Perifractic isn't his real name. Hopefully he actually signed using his legal name, Christian Simpson, on those contracts, or I'm not quite sure who wrote this press release. Bit odd. Anyway, that's by the by. After decades adrift, the brand is finally where it belongs, with fans. From legendary roots to next-gen innovation, Commodore is now free to build the future we were promised, while proudly honouring the past that started it all. And there is a photo here which features quite prominently Perifractic himself, of course, on the left-hand side here. And also, I can see at the back there, David Pleasance, who is another Commodore guy, with which I am somewhat familiar. I have met him at a couple of Amiga events, and a few of these other faces actually look quite familiar to me as well, but I'm not a Commodore guy. I'm not entirely 100% sure who is who. It doesn't really matter for the sake of this photo, but I'm guessing the guys on the right are the original, or kind of the previous owners of the Commodore brand, of course, based in the Netherlands, and the rest of them are the new Commodore company, Commodore International. So very exciting stuff. Of course, they've got the C64 Ultimate in the works, as mentioned, which actually looks like quite a cool project. And, of course, there was some speculation as to what might happen to those pre-orders. If, say, for example, the deal didn't go through, would they still be Commodore branded? Would people even receive them? And there was an announcement saying, just kind of reassuring people, telling people that, even if somehow they didn't manage to raise the money and actually purchase the brand, they did at least have the rights to use the name for that production run, and they had already had the funding to kind of put those into production and get those into people's hands, which was very nice to hear. But it seems those concerns are a thing of the past now anyway, because this is now officially a Commodore product. He's no longer acting CEO of Commodore. He is the CEO of Commodore. So, hey, I think that's quite cool, quite noteworthy. Interested to see what Peri does with the brand. I think no matter what your thoughts are on the man himself and his kind of ways of going about things and his YouTube channel, I think you would be hard-pressed to find someone who wouldn't at least agree that he is quite charismatic. I think is the right word. So hopefully he will be quite a good cheerleader for the brand. Anyway, there was another press release regarding Commodore in the past week, and of course I need to talk about this as well. This is from, what's the official legal name of this company? Commodore Industries SRL, Luigi Simonetti, who is based over in Italy. And these people have also been trading using the Commodore brand name and logo, or at least a version of the logo. I guess we'll have a little bit of a look at that in a second. But they have been trading as Commodore. They've published a few games. They have made some modern hardware as well using the Commodore brand, but they haven't been focusing on kind of reissuing older stuff like Commodore 64s and that kind of thing. And when people have been making licensed branded Commodore stuff, these aren't the people that they have been licensing the name from. That was the Netherlands-based company that I was just talking about. So I think that's quite important because I think they have a bit more of a legitimate claim to the trademarks. But nonetheless, Commodore Commodore Industries SRL, it's important to get the name right, did put out this press release as well on the 23rd of July, so a week ago today. Raising some concerns about the legitimacy of Perifractic's campaign and his mission to acquire the brand, and questioning as to whether the then owners of the brand that he has purchased these trademarks from actually had a legitimate claim to it, because they had actually been trading using those trademarks from Italy. And they have been under the impression that this kind of applies across the EU. So I don't know what the legal situation is. I'm not a trademark lawyer, and to be fair, I'm not really a Commodore guy, so I'm not really sure what the exact history is of these two companies. From where I sit, I think the brand that he has purchased all the Commodore trademarks from does seem a lot more legitimate. They do seem to have been trading for a lot longer and do seem to have more of a connection to original Commodore, however you define that. But I'm not really here to comment on that. I just kind of wanted to report on the fact that, before this deal was officially announced as having all been completed, this other company has disputed it. So it'll be interesting to see what comes of this. I did mention their logo. I will just say, this isn't a drama channel, and I don't want to pick faults and be mean to people. That's not the vibe here, but this logo did stand out to me, I must say. I mean, you look at it, and at first glance, it's the original Commodore logo, the original colours. They've got the chicken lips, or the Commodore flag, or whatever you want to call it, on the left-hand side. But just take a moment to look at this and kind of reflect on it and dwell on it. What is going on with the spacing of some of these letters? I don't know. Anyway, that's completely unrelated to the story. If you want to pause the video and have a closer look, but I promise it gets worse the longer you look at it. So, from Commodore to Atari. Next, of course, two companies whose histories are very much intertwined, and two companies who were, I think it's fair to say, quite bitter rivals back in the 80s and the early 90s. The whole Jack Tramiel connection, the ST versus the Amiga, all of that wonderful stuff. But hopefully, no matter which side of the fence you were on at the time, that's all water under the bridge now, and we can all be friends. Can we all be friends? I mean, I did do the Atari Outreach program at the Kickstart Amiga show last year, didn't I? And that seemed to go down quite well. So, hey, there's not many of us left. We're all fans of these long-dead platforms. We got to stick together. Anyway, no matter what your thoughts are on all of that, this is a very cool project, I hope you'll agree. So this is something that was actually apparently inspired by my video last week over on Control-Alt-Reese. So the author of this project got in touch with me to say that he'd seen my video, and he was so inspired by something he'd seen in that video that he wanted to bring it into the real world and make it available for all of you 3D printing enthusiasts out there. So firstly, thank you ever so much to Adam for firstly creating this, but also for getting in touch and for your very kind messages about my video. Just as a bit of a refresher though, this is the Atari Namco collaboration. So this is the Pac-Man edition console, this bright yellow 2600 Plus with this wonderful illuminated Pac-Man and Ghost display on the front. Those reissued Namco games that Atari are manufacturing, of course, those cartridges. So we've got Gallagher and Xevious and Dig Dug and Pac-Man, and an all-new version of Pac-Man for those consoles, as well as the much maligned 2600 version as well. And perhaps most importantly, and perhaps most pertinent to this particular story, the joysticks, the CX40 Plus wireless joysticks in those 5 new colorways. So inspired by the ghosts from Pac-Man, and indeed Pac-Man himself, We've got red, pink, orange, blue, and yellow joysticks with actual moulded coloured characters in the top of the stick, and the markings around the outside of the stick are inspired by Pac-Man as well, by the pills from that game. So some really nice attention to detail on these, and I was quite enamoured with the Easter eggs and the historical touches. Whoever designed these evidently knew their Atari and Namco history, which is always really nice to see. So, not wanting to wait until October to get his hands on these, Adam Freeman over on Thingiverse has created a 3D printable version of these joysticks, and these look incredible. These have micro switches inside, so proper arcade style micro switches. Let's just blow up this picture. So this is the Atari CX40 Pac-Man edition. As you can see, I mean, this looks really nicely designed to me, I will say. You are not limited to those 5 colours, of course. You can, provided you have access to the filament, you can print these in whatever colour you like, which is really cool. And this is an exploded diagram of those joysticks. So all sorts of little bits and pieces, a very well thought out design, and it's all completely 3D printable as well. So here's a photo of the parts. We've got the screws which hold it all together, which are also 3D printed. We've got the joystick itself, the button, of course, and this internal rig, jig, mechanism, whatever you want to call it, to hold these arcade micro switches. So this is going to be really nice and tactile to use, isn't it? Even more so than the original CX40 and the new CX40 Plus joysticks. And if you go through, you can see pictures of all of the individual parts, which is cool. Now, I was just having a bit of a poke around. 3D Freeman is his username over on Thingiverse. I was having a bit of a poke around his page, and it turns out that he's actually done over 70 projects, which you can actually go and download on Thingiverse. So all sorts of retro-inspired joysticks and controllers, cases for things, Raspberry Pi cases, all of that stuff. So I do encourage you to... there's actually some 3D printable bar top games and stuff here as well. Really complex-looking stuff. Yeah, I encourage you, while you're over there checking out this specific CX40 joystick project, go and check out his other projects as well. And the cool thing about this, I will say, is it's a free download, so you can just click the download button, download the zip file with all of the STL files and stuff so you can print it off yourself. And it's licensed under a really nice, quite open license as well. It's a Creative Commons Attribution Share-alike license, which is always nice to see. So if you want to modify this and make your own designs based upon it, perhaps you want to do a Control-Alt-Reese version with my face on top for some reason, that's all good, provided you obviously obey the terms of that license. So, thank you very much, Mr. Freeman, for getting in touch and for letting me know about this project. And I must say, also, thank you for your kind comments about the video. But yeah, I was quite touched actually to have inspired this. Really nice to see. And yeah, if any of you go ahead and grab this from the link down in the description, do let me know. Do let me know, because yeah, it'd be nice to see some of these in the wild. Unfortunately, I don't own a 3D printer. It's something I have deliberately avoided because I have far too many hobbies as it is, particularly expensive hobbies. But, you know, perhaps I could partner with some kind of online service that offer 3D printing. Don't know if we know of any. Yeah. So from one Atari project to another now, and another piece of hardware that's open source that you can print and create at home if you're so inclined. Now, this is a Flashcart. I'm a huge fan of these devices. I own them for most of my vintage machines, I think it's fair to say. And the concept behind these Flashcarts, of course, is that you can load them up with loads of games. You know, all the old floppy disks and cassettes and things are very much deteriorating, falling apart. Even the original cartridges for these machines are kind of starting to succumb to bit rot. And it's a great way to preserve all of those old games and programs and things. And also, I will say, indulge in a little bit of retro piracy. But hey, a lot of these games are long out of print and there's no other way to buy them. So no one's going to judge you for that, are they? Anyway, this is quite an interesting project because it actually came out of a hardware contest that's happened as part of a show over in Germany. So, yeah, I thought this was very interesting. It has quite an interesting feature as well, as you will see right now. So this is the Decent Cart 2350. Of course, the 2350 being a reference to the Raspberry Pi Pico chip that is used within to power the thing. And as you can see, if you're watching this on YouTube, it has a screen on the front. which actually displays the currently loaded game. So right at the beginning of the video, we can see the intro here, and it has Star Raiders loaded. And it's quite convincing looking, actually. If you've seen the original cartridges for these Atari 8-bit machines, it's quite kind of authentic looking. Now, this video is a bit of a technical introduction, and we have the creator here screaming at the radio, retro hardware and gaming. Let's subscribe to you. There we go. Just kind of talking us over the hardware, how it came to be, how it was created, how it actually works, of course. There aren't any links to go and download this for yourself as of yet, so yeah, you'll have to go and do some digging, I think. I couldn't really find anything, I must say. And this was created, as I mentioned, as part of a show. So this isn't a group that I'd heard of. This is the ABBUC 2025 hardware contest. And apparently, ABBUC stands for the Atari Bit-Biter User Club. Bit-Biter User Club, which is a really cool name, isn't it? And they are based over in Germany, apparently. They had their show in the past week, and this was created as part of the hardware contest for that show. So cool to see a new Flashcart option for the Atari 8-bit machines. And indeed, it's very cool that this is open source and also has that built-in screen, which I think is a very interesting feature. It's not really a thing that I've really seen on many other Flashcarts, if indeed any. I mean, I don't own any that have screens on, so there you go. That's the sample I've got to work with. So please do go and check that out. Check out the link to the video. And yeah, my hat is off to you for this wonderful Flashcart. It is a very cool thing indeed. Big news from the emulation scene this week, as a system which reportedly has never successfully been emulated in the past has now received the release of its very first emulator. And that's always something that's well worth shouting about, and something that's becoming increasingly rare in this day and age, I think. There can't be much obscure hardware left to emulate. But yeah, this is a platform that I don't really know much about. It's one that I have had some hands-on experience with. I have played with it, and of course I am familiar with its existence and its concept, but certainly not one that I really know much about. So let's learn together. And what better place to go than to Wikipedia? I mean, that's what most YouTubers do, isn't it? They just read Wikipedia and collect their ad revenue from that. So the LaserActive is a hybrid Laserdisc player and home video game console released by Pioneer Corporation in 1993. Marketed as a high-end modular entertainment system, it was designed to combine movies, music, and video games into a single unit. Out of the box, the base unit could natively play Laserdiscs and compact discs, but support for video games required optional expansion modules known as PACs or packs. Each pack enabled compatibility with a specific gaming platform and its media formats. So this is a Laserdisc player. Laserdiscs, of course, being those giant CD-looking things that you got back in the, when was it, the late 80s, early 90s, with movies on them. Quite a short-lived format, quite a cumbersome and flaky format as well, although they, were quite big in their own niche. And Pioneer decided to turn this into a modular games console. So companies like SEGA could create their own plug-in modules for the LaserActive, plug it into the back, and you could play SEGA CD games on it, for example. Which is quite a cool concept, really. Apparently there was also a PC Engine or TurboGrafx 16 module available for the LaserActive as well. I'm not sure if there were any others. Like I say, not my area of expertise, but it's the SEGA module that we are particularly interested in for this story. So this is the MegaLD pack, and this is a new emulator for the LaserActive with the SEGA MegaLD pack. And this is based on a multi-platform emulator called Ares, or shall I say a multi-system emulator. So I believe it's pronounced Ares anyway, and this emulates arcade machines, Atari 2600, ColecoVision, MSX, Game Boy, pretty much everything, which is quite strange because I actually wasn't familiar with this emulator. I guess I've moved on to Mister and stuff, but cool to see, and cool to see that there is now a version of this that supports this very obscure platform indeed. So, this is being reported over on ExodusEmulator.com, and this is an unofficial fork of Ares. Again, hopefully I'm saying that right, with functioning MegaLD emulation support, serving as a reference implementation for following work by others. This emulator was built from extensive reverse engineering of the register interface of the Pioneer PD6103 AIC, using the MegaLD Reg Editor program below, on real hardware. And most aspects of the hardware are emulated fully and correctly at this time. This is the first LaserActive emulator capable of booting and running games, although bugs will exist and more features remain to be implemented. And there's also, so you can download this, you can download the BIOS files from this page, and you can also download a game, Space Berserker, which is 28 gigabytes. Why is that 28 gigabytes? Blimey. Of course, being kind of Laserdisc based, these games took quite heavy, they lean quite heavily on FMV. Get your words out, Reese. I have actually played, I think it was it a Sonic game? Maybe it was even Space, but I can't remember. It was a long time ago, but I have played on one of these at the Cave, no less. So if you're interested in checking one out for yourself, do go and bug the Retro Collective and go and book a day down there. Great day out. And also, you get to play with some obscure hardware as well. But really cool to see. Of course, this was intended as a reference implementation for other people to kind of build on and work from, build their own kind of emulators and stuff as well. But it is fully functional, and you can download this game and you can download the emulator and play it for yourself, which is very cool to see. And as mentioned at the top of this story, of course, very noteworthy indeed, because there can't be that many obscure systems out there that don't have emulators at this point. But yeah, great work here. Great to see. And of course, the links to go and download all of this stuff will be in the usual places. So, some Raspberry Pi news next. And those of us who are into our vintage computing hardware, of course, have, I think it's fair to say, a bit of a fondness for the Raspberry Pi. It's the basis of all sorts of different projects, accelerators that go inside your Amigas and Atari STs and that kind of thing. Stuff like the Pico Gus sound card, which I've covered quite extensively in the past. Of course, the Pico Mem, of course. All sorts of vintage computing add-ons and expansions and upgrades and stuff are built on the Raspberry Pi platform. Very low cost, particularly the microcontrollers. And even stuff like the compute module, and also it's quite popular as an emulation platform in and of itself. Lots of great software emulators for all your favourite computers and consoles of the past available to run on the Raspberry Pi hardware and enjoy on your modern TV or whatever. So yeah, I don't think it's an overstatement to say that the Raspberry Pi has been an absolutely massive thing for the retro and vintage community. Now, there is an announcement that has been made on a new microcontroller, the RP2350. This is the A4 stepping of this. Steppings are hardware revisions of CPUs and chips, that kind of thing. And there's a new hacking challenge as well. This is quite a lengthy blog post, but Gravitone, one of the users over on my Discord server, spotted a really, really interesting detail buried right at the bottom of this blog post by Eben Upton, of course, the boss of Raspberry Pi itself. And we'll just start off with the intro, I guess. So the RP2350, our second generation microcontroller, is very nearly a year old. Since August last year, we've sold over 500,000 Pico 2 and Pico 2W boards, and the RP2350 itself has found its way into countless third-party products, from secure displays to development boards to synthesizers. Like any silicon device, the RP2350 wasn't perfect on day one. The launch stepping, designated A2, is affected by a number of errata, including an error in the GPIO pad design, which prevents pads from properly going into a high impedance state, and a number of security issues identified by participants in our RP2350 hacking challenge. Today, we're happy to announce the immediate availability of a new A4 stepping, which addresses the vast majority of these issues. Now, I like to keep things quite light and at quite a high level in this podcast, so I'm not going to dig into the technical details. If you are a hardware implementer, hardware designer, and you are working with these microcontrollers, all the spec sheets and things are available over on the blog post on raspberrypi.com, and he really does go into quite a lot of technical detail about the stuff that's been fixed. And as mentioned, there are some security fixes for that microcontroller as well, and a new hacking challenge to anyone who fancies trying their hand at breaking that new security. But what we're interested in here particularly, as enthusiasts of this older hardware, is right at the bottom, as mentioned. And as I say, it's a lengthy post. One more thing. Those of you interfacing RP2350 to retro computer hardware will be pleased to hear that after an extensive qualification campaign, RP2350 is now officially 5-volt tolerant. So what that means is that using the GPIO pads, you can actually directly connect those to 5-volt cartridge interfaces and that kind of thing. Of course, your TTL stuff, your old computers, your old consoles and things generally use 5 volts to communicate. More modern machines are 3.3 volts, which is what the RP2350 microcontroller and indeed its predecessors were designed around. You can use level shifters to shift that voltage level if you are interfacing your 3.3 volt modern microcontroller with that older 5 volt hardware. But this apparently is actually certified as 5 volt tolerant, so you can actually interface it directly with that hardware, which of course is going to reduce the complexity of some of those hardware projects. Stuff like, as mentioned, the PicoGus, the PicoMem, Flashcarts, all those wonderful projects out there that use these Raspberry Pi microcontrollers. So I think, quite a subtle change, but quite a welcome one and quite an interesting one. One that's going to make those hardware designers' lives a little bit easier and hopefully lead to some very interesting projects. A story from the Why Has Nobody Thought of This Before department next. And just before we dive into this, let's give a bit of background on my own personal experience and why this particularly caught my attention. So I am a huge fan of first-person shooter games. Some of my earliest PC gaming experiences specifically were playing Wolfenstein 3D on my dad's Amstrad work PC that he used to bring home to work on his work-related spreadsheets and things at the weekends. And when we got our very first PC shortly after that, a 486 DX266, it had the shareware episode of Doom pre-installed on it, which I spent all of that Christmas day playing over and over again. And of course, it's a game that's very dear to my heart indeed, as represented by the Doom Shrine behind me, which of course has to get a shout out in every ramble if I can shoehorn it in. Of course, I went on from Doom to the likes of Duke Nukem 3D, Dark Forces, Quake, Half-Life, Deus Ex, the modern Doom games, the Stalker games. I've played so many FPSs over the years. Not so much the Call of Duty games, I must say. I never really got into those. But, Halo on the Xbox, that series, a big fan of that. Anyway, just a bit of background for you. But one kind of setting, one environment that really caught my imagination back in the day was the original Half-Life. The Black Mesa Research Institute, that sprawling secret government compound. You start off in some fairly innocuous and innocent-looking offices and things, work your way through server rooms and storage rooms and kind of into these labs where you discover, through the magic of environmental storytelling, which was pretty revolutionary in Half-Life at the time, you discover the experiments on the teleportation technology, the aliens, all of that stuff as well. I don't need to explain what Half-Life's about, hopefully. But one thing that features quite prominently in that game, certainly early on in those offices, is PCs, of course. The scientists using those PCs to do their research, all hastily abandoned, some of them showing stuff like the blue screen of death and other stuff like that. And the textures, as was the case throughout the rest of the game, on those PCs were very low, of course, because of the technology at the time. And what a company has done is to basically replicate that in the form of a keyboard. So this is a story from PCGamer.com. This really kind of caught my attention and sent my nostalgia gland abuzz when I spotted it. In various places, it has also been posted to the Discord as well, I will say. The headline here is, "This keyboard looks like it's been plucked straight from Half-Life 1 with how well it replicates low-res classic game textures." A story by Jacob Fox. And the subheading here just says, "Gimme," which I must admit I totally agree with. So unfortunately, there's only the one picture to go on. I went to the official website of this keyboard manufacturer and they're doing some kind of promotion at the minute, and they've got a holding page up with a countdown. And you can't actually get in and look at the details, unfortunately, but it does pretty much tell the whole story. They've specifically, so rather than taking a standard QWERTY keyboard font and just making it blurry, they've specifically designed these keycaps to look like those old 3D games and this specific kind of visual effect that downsampling of those textures caused. So the story reads, "We've had it all with keyboards by now, really, haven't we? From mechanical to Hall effect and optical knobs and dials, touch panels, custom artisanal keycaps and everything in between. So what else could we add? A blurry font, of course. That's the whole idea behind the High Ground Basecamp 75 Plus Blur. As its name subtly suggests, it's not just any old blur slapped on top of the QWERTYs here, though as this font is specifically designed to look like a low-res game texture, as it's inspired by early 3D game textures. And I must say, keyboards aren't something that I'm particularly interested in. I have a couple of nice keyboards, but they're just tools to do the job. I know people out there are really into them in a big way, and fair play to them. They are essential pieces of hardware, and people out there doing all sorts of interesting things with them. But never before have I seen deliberately blurry keycaps. I've seen blank keycaps, of course, the DAS keyboard back in the day. I think you can still buy those. But yeah, never blurry ones. But this was right down my street, I must say. This was very much tickled a bit of a nostalgia bone as far as these old first-person shooter games was concerned. And it's certainly a project that I'm going to keep an eye on because, I might well end up picking one of these up. So, in addition to the Atari love and the PC love, the third big gaming love of my life has always been Nintendo. It's a love affair that started way back when I was very young, when my parents had bought myself and my sister matching Game Boys. Although I will say the home consoles did kind of pass us by because my parents were very much against games consoles, believe it or not. We always had to have a computer in the house, so the Atari ST and then later on the PC. Because we could do our homework on them, although, of course, inevitably, I ended up finding ways to play with it and break it, and indeed play games on it, and do pretty much anything other than do my homework, which hopefully a few of you out there will find relatable. But it's a love affair that kind of was put on hold for quite a few years until the Nintendo DS and the Wii came about. And this story is specifically about the Nintendo DS, one of my favourite consoles of all time, I will say. That dual screen setup was quite innovative, with of course, the bottom screen being a touch screen, and the way that Nintendo kind of utilised that in some of their games was really kind of interesting and not something that we'd seen previously. The trouble being, of course, that with that dual screen setup, it's quite a difficult console to emulate. It's quite hard to represent. I mean, of course, it's not hard to represent that. You can have one image above the other on the screen on any other system, but it doesn't feel right. It's never really felt right to me when I've attempted to emulate the DS, not like emulating other systems, which, of course, are designed with a single screen in mind. However, there is now a hardware solution to this conundrum if you are a huge DS fan and want to emulate it on modern hardware. I'm not talking about these, foldy screen phones and stuff like that, which are, of course, a reasonable approximation of the Nintendo DS with its two screens. But this thing, the Ayaneo Pocket DS. And this is touted as the world's first flip dual-screen Android handheld. Now, this story is over on timeextension.com. And as we can see from the image here, this is very reminiscent indeed of the DS, or indeed the 3DS. So we've got the big screen in the middle at the bottom. We've got the controls either side. We've got two thumbsticks. We've got the 4 buttons in that classic Nintendo layout. Of course, the D-pad as well, and a few extra buttons, of course. That bottom screen being an awful lot bigger than it was on the DS, even the bigger models that I've seen. And there's also this top flip screen, which is even bigger still, and apparently also 1080p. So, this is like the ultimate Nintendo DS emulation device. And no doubt, of course, game developers will find all sorts of other interesting uses for it. So, as reported, the top screen is a 7-inch OLED, which is 1080p, does all sorts of refresh rates, so 60, 90, 120, 144, 165. I'm not a screen nerd, but that sounds quite impressive. The bottom screen is a 5-inch 1024 by 768 with a 4:3 screen ratio. So that's really cool to see. Doesn't mention whether it's touchscreen or not. I would hope so. I'm not quite sure. Anyway, so let's read the story and find out. In a live stream broadcast on its YouTube channel earlier today, Ayaneo announced plans to release a new device called the Ayaneo Pocket DS, which is describing as the world's first flip dual-screen Android handheld. So they did a Windows-based Flip 1S DS earlier this month, but this one is Android-based. So there you go. And it mentions here some other, of course, dual-screen devices. This isn't the very first to ever exist, but it was a particularly interesting looking one. We've got the Retroid Pocket Mini, the Retroid Pocket 5. It's being created in collaboration with Qualcomm, of course, that big chip manufacturer. and will make its public debut at the Qualcomm Snapdragon booth at China Joy 2025, which is taking place between August the 1st and the 4th at the Shanghai New International Expo Center. So if you find yourself in Shanghai in the next few days, do pop in and check it out. It's been in development for roughly a year. No information offered about cost or a potential release date. But yeah, a prototype of the device exists and it is being shown off and displayed. So yeah, quite an interesting bit of news there for Nintendo DS fans. Another rather nice dual screen device to emulate our favourite console. Not the first ever dual screen console, but apparently the first Android-based flip dual screen console. So, hey, we'll give them that. And that, my dearest ramblers, brings us around quite neatly to my regular Video of the Week feature, wherein I feature a video that I have seen here on the old YouTubes in the past week. Quite often they are retro and or vintage computing and or gaming related. Quite often they aren't. And quite often there's one video, quite often there's more than one. And this week is going to be a bit of an exception and a bit of a break of my current streak because I have 3 videos for you this week. And only one of them is retro computing related. And it's one that you've probably seen already. Hence I wanted to feature the other 2. Now the truth of the matter is, I haven't watched any retro computing YouTube in the past week. I've watched one video from one creator, which I stuck on in the background, which was quite interesting, quite a long one. But I have watched a couple of other things. And you know what? I'm going to talk a little bit about the other stuff that I've been watching. It might be of interest to you. It might not. So let's start off with this. This is the trailer for Spinal Tap 2. Now, as you're probably aware, if you're a regular viewer or listener of these rambles, of course, I'm a big fan of my rock music, my classic rock music. I have played in bands as well. You can't quite see the picture of my old band there in the background, but you can spot it in quite a few of my videos. And I've always been a huge fan of the film This Is Spinal Tap. It's surreal, it's absurd, it's exactly that kind of humour that I like. And also, you know, having been in bands and stuff, bits of it are unfortunately quite relatable as well. And they have finally made a sequel. And I think usually the case is that, you know, when they make sequels to these much-loved classic films, they just end up being absolutely terrible, don't they? I mean, we've had such... I'm not going to name any specific examples, but we've certainly had some absolute stinkers in recent years. But this looks good. The trailer actually is genuinely laugh out loud funny in places. It's got people like Paul McCartney and Elton John in it. And it's just... Yeah, I like it. I like the tone of this trailer. If the film is anything like this, then this is going to be absolutely brilliant. So this film, This Is Spinal Tap 2, is going to be released in September this year. And I just wanted to make you aware of that. And if you are a fan of that kind of comedy, musical stuff, fly on the wall mockumentary type stuff, go check it out. The second video that I wanted to make you aware of is very much mainstream normie YouTube, and I have been absolutely hooked on this series. In fact, this is what I'm actually going to go and watch when I finish recording today, and I'm not ashamed to admit it. This is Ryan Trahan, and he's got millions of subscribers. His videos get millions of views. He's quite a young guy, you know, he makes videos on his iPhone, but they are brilliantly edited and brilliant storytelling. It's all very wholesome, very kind of positive stuff. And he's travelling around America. He's actually literally just finished in the past couple of days and staying in the top-rated Airbnb in every single state in America, so all 50 states. Now, of course, I'm not American. I don't know America that well. I don't know the states. You know, I've been to California, I've been to Florida, I've been to New York, but there's all that stuff in the middle that those of us in the rest of the world don't really get to experience. So actually, seeing what the scenery is like, what the people are like, seeing how all the, you know, the local shops, the local brands and stuff kind of vary as they travel around the country, I thought was really interesting. They're a really lovely, wholesome couple. There's some really nice, tense moments and some great storytelling in this, some great editing. I just enjoy this kind of stuff. And you know what? It's time I actually came out and admitted to that publicly. So I'll also link that if you want to go and check out that series. I appreciate it's not everyone's cup of tea, but family viewing, perhaps. And yeah, the third and final one, you've probably seen this because it's LGR. I don't really, I like shouting out LGR because I like Clint. He's a lovely guy. Of course, I did that interview with him quite a while back, and we have stayed in touch since. But you all watch his channel, don't you? So you've probably seen this. This is on his Blurbs channel. This is his kind of walk around vlog experience, first person experience of the Southeast Game Exchange 2025. He's done quite a few of this style of video over the years. I always watch them. I always just pop them on while I'm doing other stuff. This one's 55 minutes long, and it's just really interesting to see these big shows in different parts of the world and kind of how they come together, the different things that people are selling, and the conversations that he's having with people. This one's quite interesting because he's quite obviously well known at stuff like the big computer shows and the big gaming shows and stuff. Whereas here, a lot of people don't actually know who he is, which makes the interactions that he's having with people quite interesting, I think. Quite interesting to see. And there's a load of old games and old consoles on sale and some interesting 3D printed stuff and some quite creative stuff that's just quite interesting to look at. And it's always nice to hang out with Clint for an hour. So that's my third video of the week. 3 very different videos. A film trailer for the sequel to one of my favourite films of all time, which hopefully, fingers crossed, touch wood, is actually shaping up to be quite cool, I think. The second one, mainstream normie YouTube big series, a really nice, lovely young couple travelling around America, showing us bits of America that I've certainly never seen. And thirdly, we got Clint, good old Clint. So there we go. Hopefully there's something there for everyone, and I hope you enjoy. And so, sadly, as is always inevitably the case, of course, it is now time for this ramble to begin to draw to a close. Now, this is, of course, usually the slot where I would talk about my latest release over on my main channel, Control-Alt-Reese, which last week was the Atari Namco collaboration video, of course. But this week, I don't have a main channel release to promote to you, so I thought, just on a whim, and I've literally just decided to do this, so I haven't rehearsed this, I'm not really sure what I'm going to say yet, but we'll work our way through it. I want to show to you a little personal project that I've been working on for my own personal use. Now, I don't know if this is going to turn into something bigger, if it's going to be made public, if it's, if some of you are going to get offended by this, I must say, because it does involve LLM, AI stuff, ChatGPT, and I know that's quite controversial, but YouTube is a highly competitive market, and I've been quite interested just lately in trying to optimize my videos as much as possible. So optimizing the titles, the descriptions, the tags, just trying to get YouTube to kind of recommend them to the widest audience that it can, and perhaps more importantly, the most relevant audience that it can, people who are actually genuinely interested in the topics that I'm talking about and who will stick around and actually watch the videos. And I have had some success with this in recent times. So over the past few months, I've had quite a few videos that have done, say, over 100,000 views, which is absolutely brilliant for my channel. And a big part of that is you, of course. So, of course, a big thank you to you for watching those. But I have started tinkering a little bit with ChatGPT and giving it the details for those videos, so the titles, the descriptions, and stuff like that, and saying, is this as optimal as it can be? Do you have any suggestions for alternative titles that I could use or improvements I could make to the description? And it's been coming back with some really useful stuff. Now, of course, I can't, I haven't done proper experiments. I can't kind of give it full credit for the success of some of those videos, but it got me thinking that perhaps I could automate that to some extent and maybe build myself a tool to actually do that in a more, a more efficient manner and a slightly more user-friendly manner. So this is my YouTube optimizer. Now, I built this myself in Blazor, which is ASP.NET Core. It's a Microsoft technology, and this is just kind of hosted locally on my machine at the moment. It has its own login system with user accounts and stuff, because I was just tinkering with that. I wanted to separate out all of the admin features and things. But yeah, so essentially what this does is you give it a URL of a YouTube video. It uses the YouTube API to get all of the details for that video. So aforementioned stuff I'll show you in a second. And it then passes those to the OpenAI API and asks ChatGPT to give its feedback on those videos and presents them all nicely with quite a nice user interface. I also added a report download feature as well. And yeah, you can click through and see the extended data for the video, current like count and view count, or at least as at the time of the last scraping of the YouTube API. And it presents all of its suggestions and things. And it's actually come up with some really interesting kind of title suggestions and, improvements that I could make to the description. new tags that I can add to videos that are, of course, relevant to the actual content that might help to increase its visibility on YouTube, and some more kind of broader advice for packaging and kind of sharing stuff on social media, that kind of thing. So it's just a little tool that I've built for myself, but I'm actually oddly proud of this thing. And if you come through to the video ideas section, you can paste in a channel URL, and this just kind of shows what the process looks like when it's querying those APIs. And it will look at all of the videos on my channel, obviously work out what kind of topics I'm covering on my YouTube channel, pass all of those over to ChatGPT, and that will come back with some suggested video ideas with titles. So, The Lost Games of Atari, Rediscovering Vintage Prototypes. It's got a bit of a description. Unveil forgotten treasures of the gaming world with rare Atari prototypes. That'd be a good video, wouldn't it? Running XP on modern hardware. Can Windows XP survive on today's machinery? Again, that sounds quite interesting. Backlit screen upgrade for the original Game Boy. Uncovering the best hidden features in Windows 98. Building an MS-DOS handheld console. Installing Windows 3.1 on a modern PC. So yeah, it takes the kind of broad topics that I cover in my videos. And of course, it hits that ChatGPT API once, and then it saves all of this in a database locally. So I'm not creating a load of load on that. I am trying to be as conscious as I can be with kind of not abusing that and overloading it, because of course I am well aware of the implications of using it. But ultimately, it's a technology that exists. I need to keep my finger on the pulse and see what the latest is with it as a developer, of course. I don't want to be left behind, and something that kind of benefits me in this way, I think, is quite a nice use of that new technology. And actually, it's coming up with some genuinely good, useful stuff, which is more than I can say. I will say YouTube has added their own video idea thing quite recently, and I've also seen similar things in services called TubeBuddy and vidIQ. Not wanting to talk, to kind of trash talk them, but I've seen similar services that I've tested out myself and have come back with absolute garbage. And actually, there's a load of good stuff in here. So there you go. I was quite proud of that. I understand it might be quite controversial. I know people are quite polarised on their views of this kind of modern LLM stuff, but it's a tool, and I've actually found it genuinely quite useful, and I felt like building a little front end for that as well. So that's a little insight into the kind of stuff that I get up to in my spare time. Coding has generally just been a day job for me for the past 15 years. So for something like this to kind of capture my imagination, and for me to be up until, like 2 o'clock in the morning tweaking it and stuff, is quite unusual for me. So, and anything that helps to improve my channel and, help keep things flowing has to be a good thing. So there we go. That's all I have for you for this week's Ramble. Thank you ever so much for joining me. If you still like me and don't hate my guts because I dared mention ChatGPT, then you can join me next week, same time, same place, 2 minutes to midnight, Friday, UK time. You know the drill by now. Available on YouTube, all the podcast platforms. That's all I got for you. I got to edit this and upload it very, very quickly. So goodbye.